On a hill in New Mexico sits an old trailer. Inside it lives an old man. Ken Hamill and Bob Nelson are Bruce Stark's neighbors and make a point of checking in on the 72-year-old. On the morning of September 11th, Bob Nelson stops by.
Noticed that he wasn't around. Things didn't look right. I searched the area for him, was unable to find him. Alerted my neighbor, Ken Hamill.
He stopped by my place and asked me if I knew where Bruce was, and I told him probably at home. He said, no, I stopped over there, and the camper here was unlocked, and he couldn't find anything.
Nelson and Hamill return to Bruce Stark's camper and begin to walk the land, looking for some trace of their friend.
When we did come down here, we saw all these beer cans laying here. I knew Bruce didn't drink beer, so I told Bob, I said, you know, he had some friends here.
I'm immediately concerned because I found several items that appeared that an altercation had occurred here. Right behind me here on the ground, I found a knife taken out of its case, and I also found a spotting scope lying on the ground that I didn't recognize.
I found his glasses laying by the front door, and they were broke. And also an empty billfold. We found this empty billfold up on top of the refrigerator.
I was concerned that somehow he had been involved in an altercation here and had been assaulted and was lying on the ground somewhere.
5 days after Bruce Stark disappeared, Bob Nelson and Stark's son, Johnny Ray, begin removing planks of wood covering a well just 200 feet from Stark's camper.
The well itself is encased with this wooden box, and it was locked with a padlock, and I was unable to gain access. But Johnny explained to me that this box is actually a ruse, and it's able to be removed. And once we removed the box, we were able to get into the interior depths of the well.
Bruce Stark is dead, his body draped with rope. An autopsy confirms Bruce Stark was beaten but still alive when he was thrown into the well. Unable to make his way to the surface, Stark lay there, probably 4 hours, before he died of exposure. Stark's family tells police about some guns Stark had, now missing from the camper.
He had 3 long guns and 2 handguns. His son and/or his ex-wife had maintained serial numbers for each of those weapons. Those were given to the investigators, and they were entered into NCIC as stolen.
The federal database, however, turns up nothing, and Bruce Stark's homicide is shuffled into New Mexico's cold files. Meanwhile, investigators wait, wonder, and hope that someone will be foolish enough to use a gun that could connect him to a murder.
In everyone's mind, all the investigators involved in the case knew that at some point a weapon's going to show up, either on a traffic stop if an officer searches a car or something.
That something doesn't happen for 3 years, until a gun turns up in a pawn shop.
Pawn shops in Albuquerque have a pretty good reputation as far as cooperation with law enforcement.
On a November afternoon, Campbell and Richardson sift through pawn shop gun records, looking for a pawn ticket to Bruce Stark's .357 Ruger.
By transaction records and so forth, we're able to track it to this pawn shop and associate the pistol with the person who pawned it.
The gun was pawned 2 days after Bruce Stark's murder by a man named Edward Sedler. Campbell runs a background check and finds Sedler to be a man with a past.
He'd had some trouble with the law and has had some trouble with drugs and so forth. During the process of backgrounding him, found out that he was tied to a missing vehicle.
According to police records, Sedler and a second man, Philip Lopez, borrowed the vehicle from the local Salvation Army and never returned it. On December 17th, Agent Bill Richardson questions Edward Sedler. According to Sedler, he and Lopez drank beer with Stark in his trailer well into the night. At some point, Sedler claims Lopez grabbed one of Stark's guns and began to beat the old man.
We're headed in the federal park. Yeah, we're hitting him real hard. Jesus Christ, I could hear what sounded like, bones breaking. I could hear it. Philip started yelling at me, don't ever say anything, or something to that effect. I didn't know if he was really just unconscious or if he was actually dead. And he grabbed him from like the underside of his arm and started dragging him down. I kind of watched, and I just couldn't believe what he was doing.
Sedler goes on to say that Philip Lopez dragged Bruce Stark down to a well, opened it up, and pitched Stark in.
I saw absolutely no remorse. I saw a fellow who was trying to figure out how to get himself out of a very, very bad situation.
Detectives doubt Sedler's story and book him on a charge of murder. He is taken to Los Lunas, New Mexico, where Philip Lopez is waiting to be interrogated.
Just tell me from the beginning what happened. I don't even have to give you any questions. Just tell me what happened.
He got the old man by the neck and broke his neck.
As investigators listen, Philip Lopez flips the script, claiming Sedler was the killer, and he, Lopez, merely an accomplice.
First, you're going to borrow some money. I didn't borrow. He was going to rob him. I said, well, let's go for it. He grabbed him by the neck, took him down, and twisted his neck and broke it. That's when, want to have my turn? It's my turn. Okay. He tells me you're going to help me or not. And that's when we drug him into the window up. That's when I was scared for my life.
What I was thinking is we're finally here. All this time that the Starks had waited for the information to come forth about who killed their father, we finally had the killers. That's what I was thinking.
6 months later, Edward Sedler pleads guilty to second-degree murder and is sentenced to 40 years in prison. In spite of his confession, Philip Lopez decides to take his chances and face a jury. On March 5, 2001, he is found guilty and sentenced to life in prison.
Yeah, when I found Bruce in that well, I called myself some pretty bad names, Ken. I mean, I cussed myself for being so damn stupid.
I don't know if Bruce realized how many friends he did have here. I personally just thought that he wanted to be somebody, or have people think he was somebody, not knowing that he was.